Joe De Sena here, CEO and founder of Spartan and the Spartan Up podcast. I've got a special one for you today. I've got Professor Baumeister. He's a psychology professor, but really an expert in self-control, which we could all use a little more of. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
How can I get more self-control?
Welcome to the Spartan Up podcast, hosted by Joe De Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Race, and brought to you by Wild Health.
We are talking about overcoming obstacles. The same way we teach people to get over obstacles on the course, we will teach you here on the Spartan Up podcast to get over obstacles in your mind.
Get fully personalized healthcare based on your DNA, biometrics, and blood work with Wild Health, the official healthcare provider of Spartan. Go to wildhealth.com and use the code Spartan10 to save 10%.
Activate the best, most energized, productive, and connected version of yourself with Heroic, the official wellness app of Spartan. Learn more and get started with your free Spartan starter pack at heroic.us/Spartan. That's heroic.us/Spartan.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by the Exogen Ultrasound Bone Healing System. Exogen is a non-invasive treatment option that can help heal your broken bone. To learn more, visit exogen.com/Spartan.
I've got Professor Baumeister. He's a psychology professor, but really an expert in self-control, which we could all use a little more of. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
How can I get more self-control? And then I want to tell you a fun story about my son 8 years ago when I was testing his ability to delay gratification. But how could we all get a little more self-control?
Well, our research and that of other people suggests self-control works like a muscle. So if you exercise it, it gradually gets stronger. And it's sort of one basic muscle that you use for everything. So any sort of exercise improves your capacity for self-control in other spheres. It's not magic, but it does seem to work. Back in the Victorian era, there was the notion of building character, that you took cold showers or denied yourself pleasures or whatever, and that would make you stronger. And it seemed like a quaint notion, except our research seems to bear it out, that people who push themselves and discipline themselves and so on, they are more capable with self-control, and the benefits carry over into many different spheres, even unrelated to what they exercised.
I love it when I get an expert like yourself who spends their life studying something, right, and proves out that what we do at Spartan actually has a place in the world. Because a lot of people, including my own family, my daughters this morning, they look at me like a crazy person. Why would we crawl under barbed wire? Why would we do anything hard? Dad, why would you turn the hot water heater off and make us take cold showers? It turns out there's some science, you're saying, that when you do hard things, you build that muscle and it becomes easy. So let me ask you this, doctor. Do you start out, if you're somebody that has very little self-control, do you start out with simple things and then work your way up?
Yes, I think that's the best. Pick something easy and succeed at it. I've get questions around New Year's resolutions time, because people make New Year's resolutions and then fail at them. And I believe in self-improvement, which is what most resolutions are, but they have sort of a dismal history. So what I suggest is do them in order. Not if you're trying to do all at once, you've got a limited supply of willpower, and everything you put into one will take away from your ability to do the others. So having multiple ones, they work against each other. But pick the easiest one. Maybe it's going to make your bed every morning or something like that. And keep that up until you succeed at it, and then move on to the slightly harder one, and then maybe cold showers or whatever from your example. And down the road, the more difficult ones, like taking up an exercise program or quitting cigarette smoking if you smoke, or dieting to lose weight, the more difficult ones will get easier, having built up some character strength from the others.
I like that. We should make we're going to make a Spartan list from easy to hard. And when you become a pro, when you're like Serena Williams, then you could tackle a Spartan race.
Yes, so a lot of the top athletes, they have to have really remarkable self-discipline to put in hours that are needed to achieve that level of excellence. They need talent and other things too. Unfortunately, some people put in the same amount of time and not reach that level. But hardly anyone reaches the level without that work. I know in my own field in science, I read papers by other people and I think, oh my God, this person is such a gifted writer. It's so beautiful. This person must just have an innate talent that's so high. And then I get to know them and it turns out they work really hard at it, at disciplining themselves and saying it and then saying it a different way and pushing themselves to be better and better.
And does it work in reverse? Like if you slip up, do you weaken the muscle?
Well, a single slip up, probably not. But if you go through a period where you get lazy and self-indulgent, I would guess so. We don't have research on that because it's not really ethical to take your research subjects and make them into worse people. So they'd be more prone to, all sort of the low self-control mistakes of not paying their bills or missing deadlines or eating too much or sleeping with the wrong person, taking drugs, whatever. So we don't really have a solid mass of evidence. My impression is yes, that's what happens when life gets too easy and people lose the habits of discipline. But that's much less well documented. The improvements, many researchers have found that on different continents, people I don't even know. So that seems to be a pretty solid finding.
It seems to me, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about society in general, certainly in the first world where we are, and you brought it to my mind because you mentioned the Victorian era. When I think about, at least from movies and books, when I think about 100 years ago, 200 years ago, where it seemed like people, especially religious people, were stoic. Or actually go back 2,500 years ago and think about the Stoics, right? It seems as though they practiced it, they understood it, and then we get to a place where we are today, where maybe we don't make our bed, our pants are falling off, we're not dressed in a suit and a perfect tie every day, we're not going to church on Sunday. Overall, would you argue we've all got a little less self-control, just as a general population?
This is a complicated question, and I don't have a clear answer to that. There are some signs that we are better and some signs that we are weaker. Certainly parenting was much stricter 100 years ago than it is now, and so children grew up with habits of discipline and so on. On the positive side, suggesting that self-control has improved, well, this general reduction in violence and crime and other misbehavior. But part of that is driven by better surveillance and police and things like that. It's much harder to get away with a crime now than 100 or 200 years ago. So some of the improvement comes from that. But I don't know. Certainly and parents are very different too. It's hard to generalize. So comparing across different eras is difficult. If you go back fairly far, several centuries or more, then I think society was more on discipline. So there's been improvement in self-control across society the last couple of centuries, but it may have come down. I mean, one popular theory is it was highest. The Victorian era ended around World War I. It was about the century up to that, so the late 1800s. And that was a particularly disciplined time. Religion was still strong. Families remained intact. Divorce was almost impossible. And people believed in the value of discipline. Religion, we know, does contribute to self-control, which is not to say that you can't have good self-control if you're not religious. But in general, I know some researchers who were looking into this. They first noticed that religious people live longer than people who are not religious. And a lot of them want to say, well, why is that? Maybe it's because God is taking care of us or something like that. But that isn't really a scientific explanation, and it seems to be true for all different religions. It works for different gods. So the next explanation is they live longer because they have better self-control. They take care of themselves and they don't drink too much and have bad habits and so on. And that seems to be true. Now, why religion has this effect, there are multiple explanations, and I don't think that's been resolved. But certainly, like you mentioned, there's the sort of daily discipline of behaving well and watching your language and going to church occasionally and your evening prayers or whatever you do. So there are those little rituals that you discipline yourself to do, and some of that probably helps build self-control. How much it helps, it's hard to say.
But overall, just generally, you would say doing hard stuff, sticking to some sort of discipline ritual every day is a good thing.
Yes, if you want to be a strong, capable person who can cope with difficult times better and can carry out programs to improve yourself once you resolve something to do it. Yes, that's true.
If you could design a program for somebody, let's say my kids, I've got a 10-year-old, I work my way all the way up to 17 years old. You could design a program so that they could be the best they can be from a willpower, self-control standpoint. What would you say that program would look like?
So the age matters a lot. I mean, we want, in the Willpower book, we had a whole chapter trying to pull together what we could find in terms of how parents can improve self-control in their kids. And by the way, that's much more important than self-esteem. The fad of boosting kids' self-esteem has not really done a lot of good, I think, for them, other than people who were treated really badly. But self-control delivers a lot more benefits than self-esteem. What you do to build it with the child, it changes somewhat with the age. So with small children, you set the rules, and it's important to be extremely consistent with them and clear, and not just punish when they fail, but also reward when they succeed. I think even just knowing that having good self-control in your children is something you want, that's good for them and good for society, can attune you to that. I remember being in a car with a woman who was telling her daughter, oh, back at the school, I know you weren't happy when so-and-so didn't share with you, but you controlled your feelings, you didn't say anything, you just went, and I was very proud of you. So this woman is reacting to something that didn't happen, but she was attentive enough to notice that her child exerted good self-control and pointed it out and said, I'm proud of you for that. That sort of thing is really good. Now, with older children, I think you need to involve them more in the making of the rules. They have to agree to them and sort of own it or embrace it and say, yes, I'm going to do that. In terms of building self-control, keeping track is an important part of the process. So if you say, well, I'm going to pick up jogging this summer, well, that's a great positive thing, or it can be playing the piano or whatever. But keep a record, write down every day, and have the child start keeping records too. Did you play? How long did you play piano? How long did you jog? And keep track, because it's easy to fool yourself and say, well, this week I think I did it some. But if you look at the record and, oh, I only did it once, then you know you're not living up to that. Then you encourage the child to set goals and to reward himself or herself for meeting those goals. People don't usually punish themselves for falling short, but if I play piano for half an hour a day for the next 10 days, then I can have some special treat or something that I want. And you get in the habit of pushing yourself to achieve and then rewarding yourself for doing it. And then that creates a positive, virtuous circle and the habit that, you make yourself be good and then you reward yourself. And that's a good pathway to a successful life, I think.
So definitely notice when the child is exercising some self-control, set some sort of metrics so you could track it and then reward yourself. I would argue, tell me what you think. I remember Rocky 1, Sylvester Stallone, and I remember Rocky 2. And I thought, gee, when Rocky was fighting for milk, when he wanted to win, he wanted to be able to pay some bills, marry the woman, he trained, he got after it. As soon as he made some money, he started to lose some of that, self-control. And so I thought that happens a lot with boxers. When boxers have a big date on the calendar, they're being pulled to be disciplined. And I noticed it across 10 million, Spartans or Tough Mudders or marathon runners, you name it. When they have a date on the calendar, they start going to bed early. They start waking up early. They start training. They start putting down the cookie, not eating the ice cream. So does a purpose, or what I call a date on the calendar, does that help, you think, keep things on track?
Oh, yes. Yes. I mean, you need a certain amount of discipline to care and say, oh, I've got a date on the calendar next month or in 6 months, so I need to start getting ready for it. But some people will just procrastinate until it's too late. If it's a distant goal, then it helps to set intermediate goals so that by the end of the month, I want to reach the desired weight, and by the middle of next month, I should be running so and so many miles per day. So that works. Another thing that helps is to make your goals public, because that adds social pressure to it. And it's one thing to say, I'm going to run 2 miles every day all summer, and then just not do it and forgive yourself. But if you've told everybody you're going to do it, then it's more embarrassing to not fail. Lots of people, when they take up an exercise thing, even I know a bunch of older men who embraced we're going to walk 10,000 steps a day thing. And they made sure they had a common website and they recorded each day, and they could tease each other and say, oh, what's the matter? Only 7,000 yesterday, you're goofing off. And so then you're motivated not just for the love of doing 10,000 steps, but to save face in your group. So that helps as well.
Yeah, you're literally, you could be the CEO of Spartan, because
I don't think so.
Well, everything you're saying is what we've been saying without the science. What would be fun for us is every year we'll have, let's say, 1.5 million registrations around the world to do a study with those 1.5 million people. But I can assure you, from all the conversations I've had all over the world, 45 countries, men, women, tall, short, fat, skinny, when they have a date on the calendar and they make that commitment and they're public with it, like you said, it holds them accountable. We had lots of people on the podcast, but we had a researcher who said the number one motivator for a human being is the avoidance of discomfort. And it's what's kept us alive on the planet for as long as it has. The brain requires so much energy that it's a bit delicate around pushing too hard or expending too much energy or getting too close to that cliff so you don't fall off. And I would expect, I know in the morning when I go to do my workout, and I bet anybody listening is thinking this, you find yourself checking your phone or maybe making some coffee or doing anything other than what you're supposed to be doing, which is going to do the workout. Brain is like almost throwing obstacles in it and saying, wait, don't. and so it really is amazing when you're able, like you said early in the conversation, to flip it so that it's more painful to not do it than it is to do it.
You know you need protein, but exactly how much? I'm Dr. Julie Fouché from Wild Health. Protein is important for building muscle. It's also important for our immune function and hormone signaling. And most people need somewhere between 1.2 and 2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. So what does that mean? If you're 150 pounds, that means you need somewhere between 80 and 135 grams per day. How do you spread that out? Well, a great way to start is by looking at 30 grams of protein per meal for your 3 main meals. What is 30 grams of protein? Well, if you're eating chicken, that's going to be 3 to 4 ounces of chicken. If you're eating eggs, 5 eggs will get you 30 grams of protein. And if you're a vegan or vegetarian, 1.5 cups of cooked tofu will also get you 30 grams of protein. Now, you can also incorporate protein as snacks throughout the day. Real food is always going to be preferred. So things like hummus, nuts, and nut butter, or even Greek yogurt are great ways to sneak in some extra grams of protein throughout the day. And if you're in a pinch, you can also do things like add some collagen to your coffee or add a protein powder from a good quality source to a smoothie. So remember, the magic formula is 1.2 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. A great way to do that is by getting 30 grams per meal and also adding in some extra protein with your snacks throughout the day.
Get fully personalized healthcare based on your DNA, biometrics, and blood work with Wild Health.
And so it really is amazing when you're able, like you said early in the conversation, to flip it so that it's more painful to not do it than it is to do it.
Yes, the social pressure can do that, and so on. Forming the habit helps, I suppose. And yes, people may resist. I remember back when I used to go swimming, swim team days, and so on. There's always the getting into the cold water, especially in the morning, that held you up a little bit. And now I prefer to do my jogging later in the day, because then I've been working in my intellectual work all day, and so I'm eager for a break. And going out jogging is a good thing. And as I said, once it becomes a habit, you need a lot of self-control to start an exercise program. But if you do it every day, it doesn't take as much self-control to keep it up. The people with good self-control, they don't really have more willpower in the sense of the energy. They just use it more effectively, and they use it to manage habits. They break their bad habits and form good habits, and then life runs pretty smoothly.
That's interesting. It's kind of like brushing your teeth. You're not going from 0 to 10 anymore. It's just a thing you do every day, and it's kind of
right.
Church on Sundays. You've been doing it forever. You do it with your family. It just becomes a thing. Making your bed.
Yes.
So the message for the audience is you got to make it a thing, right? You got to create a streak. But one last thought. There's a great book out there. Will It Make the Boat Go Faster? I don't know if if you've seen this book or read this book, but basically it recounts a men's rowing team, and their goal was to win the Olympic gold. And the coach said, look, what we're going to do is every day we're going to ask ourselves questions around decisions, and the question we're going to ask is, will it make the boat go faster? So, hey, we had a great day today. Let's go hang out with the girls. Will it make the boat go faster hanging out with the girls? No, we're not hanging out with the girls. We had a great training session this morning. Let's go get ice cream for lunch. Will it make the boat go faster? No, we're not having ice cream for lunch. And I guess that kind of happens subconsciously when you have that date on the calendar, right? You start saying to yourself, gee, is that helping me for that thing that's coming up?
Well, yes. I mean, that's when you have a single criterion and an overriding goal, that can help, and it's good to evaluate the other things you do in light of that goal.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're trying to win over a new woman or a man in your life. You're probably going to make your bed. You're probably going to straighten things up, right? Because they're coming over to the house and they're going to look at what the house looks like.
Yes.
Right. Which is kind of like the date on the calendar for the Olympics in the example I gave with the boat. So I don't know. I guess I keep coming back to Marion, our producer in the background, is sending me questions, right, that are exciting her about your talk. And I just keep coming back to, you gotta have something that's pressing you to stay on track. You brush your teeth because you don't want to be embarrassed with bad breath and black teeth when you meet somebody, right? And that starts the ritual. Okay, Doc, forget about the kids, the adults. Can the adults apply some of the supply some of the techniques that you've mentioned here, like starting out with baby steps? They're stuck. They hit the snooze button every day.
Yes, that's the logical thing to do. Start easy, discipline yourself. Pick some small self-improvement goal and carry it through, and actually succeed at that. Actually, one of my colleagues is a clinical psychologist, and she says many of her patients have problems that they don't seem to care about anything. They think they don't have any self-control. They don't have any motivation. So these are people who obviously are having problems. But the question is, what can we do to them to get them to use their abilities? I mean, we assume the mind is built the same in them as everyone else, but people acquire a habit of not wanting to exert themselves, or thinking life should be easy, or there are other reasons people become passive. Fearing responsibility or not wanting to take a chance. But I don't know, you miss out on life if you don't push yourself to go out and seize hold of it a bit more.
That's the greatest sentence ever for our brand. You miss out on life if you don't seize hold of it and push. I love it. Do we have a limited amount? You mentioned it in passing before. We all have a limited amount. Are you referring to the fact that, like, a prisoner of war at some point, using that analogy, would just break? They can only hold out so long?
What they say about torture is that everyone will break down eventually. So it's just a matter of time. But yes, a lot of our research, what got me into this indeed at the start, was that after people exert self-control, if there's another self-control task that comes along, they do worse at it. So that suggests that they used up some of their willpower, and they need to recover, to restore it before they're as good as they normally are. So that's what started me thinking along the lines of this capacity for self-control is limited and maybe dependent on a limited supply of energy, which the folk term willpower, and scientists hesitate to borrow folk terms, so we didn't use the willpower term for a long time, but eventually became convinced, yes, this is what it is. There is a kind of energy that gets used up. It's tied into the body's energy system, and so that is, of course, limited. You don't have unlimited energy. There's this sort of quip about being at the Olympics. You want to give it your all, and how can you tell if you've given it your all? And somebody says, well, I guess if you're alive at the end of the race, you could have put in a little more. So that's extreme, and hoping people don't exert themselves to use up all the energy in their body and kill themselves. That would be unproductive. Nevertheless, we have more willpower than we think we have. The body has more energy than we think. It evolved under conditions when food supply was unreliable. We didn't have medicine to help you fight off diseases and so on. So the mind naturally conserves its energy. And it does this in thinking, it does this in physical activity as well. And it works with self-control likewise. And you can continue to exert self-control when you start to think, oh, my willpower has been depleted. You can do more. At some point, you will start failing. Again, the supply is limited, but it's more than we think. If you have good habits, it will go farther. That's why I said the people with good self-control, the people who are successful in life, they don't have more energy in their body. Glucose is, one part of the energy supply. It's not like they have more of that inside them. They just use it more effectively. As I said, if you use it to manage your habits, then most of life can run smoothly. People with poor self-control are often having to use their willpower to dig themselves out of problems that they dug themselves into in the first place. They missed a deadline and then they have to deal with all the problems for that, or they got into an argument with their family and loved ones or whatever and said some things they shouldn't have said, or threw something or whatever, and they have to deal with that and undo those problems. So life is actually easier for people with good self-control because of the habits.
Life is easier for people with good self-control. Thank you, doctor. How do people find Willpower? I assume you go a lot deeper in the book.
Yeah, the book sold very well. I've heard from a lot of people saying it seemed to help them do well. So if people want it, it's easily available. There's always more research being done, but the stuff in the book is still basically sound.
I think what we should do is take a couple of cases of these books, put it on top of the mountain in a snowstorm, and see if people have the willpower to go get one. How's that?
Well, they'd probably be better able to get one after they've read the book, not before.
I'll leave you with one quick story. I was testing my son. I gave him a scoop of ice cream when he was 6 years old. I said, Jack, if you have the willpower to wait, I'll give you 2 scoops. And I looked at my clock and it was about 3.5 minutes. He turned to me and he said, hey, Dad, how long would I have to wait to get 15 scoops? And so the message to everybody here is we're playing for 15 scoops in life. So get a little willpower, get some habits in place, start by making your bed, and we could all have 15 scoops.
That's a good plan. People with good self-control do succeed better than others in just about every sphere that's measured. They have better relationships, more friends, they have more successful at school, make more money at work, more successful careers, less likely to be arrested, fewer personal problems, and they live longer.
Activate the best, most energized, productive, and connected version of yourself with Heroic, the official wellness app of Spartan. Learn more and get started with your free Spartan starter pack at heroic.us/Spartan. That's heroic.us/Spartan.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by the Exogen Ultrasound Bone Healing System. Exogen is a non-invasive treatment option that can help heal your broken bone. To learn more, visit exogen.com/Spartan. Get fully personalized healthcare based on your DNA, biometrics, and blood work with Wild Health, the official healthcare provider of Spartan. Go to wildhealth.com and use the code Spartan10 to save 10%.